G'day, welcome back. Today I'm continuing the series on corresponding squares, and we've moved on to one of the really well-known big names in the field in the early 20th century, Vitaly Halberstadt. You can see in the thumbnail there the position we're going to look at, kind of contrived but also very complicated, very similar to the Lasker-Reichhelm, Lecoq and so on positions, Bianchetti positions we have been looking at. Very complicated solution, which we're going to go through. And it's quite a lot of fun looking at all these different compositions which these chess players have come up with in the past. Okay, so let's go to the capture screen now. With Halberstadt, he is very famous because he wrote this book. His picture, we're on the Avers page here at the moment. A lot of information about him. There's a picture. And this is the main thing, because actually he wrote a book with Marcel Duchamp, the artist, right, about corresponding squares. In particular, we scroll down and then we can see that opposition and cases, which I think is squares conjugate, opposition and sister squares, right? So basically, that's exactly what we're talking about. 1932. In fact, this book, I'd really like to sort of see a copy of it, but unlike his other examples where I've been able to find scanned copies on the internet, this one seems a little bit more difficult to get hands on, and you can see it's almost like a work of art in terms of the title page and the page layout and all that sort of stuff, right? Which has probably got something to do with it. I saw one of them selling for €8,000 or something. So very pretty valuable book. And a linked book, which would be really interesting to get a look at, is the one by Bianchetti, because when Halberstadt and Duchamp wrote this book, there was some accusation of plagiarization of the Bianchetti material. Bianchetti, it's not a book I can't see, but who knows? You can see how in a lot of these corresponding squares, basically people have recycled positions and ideas and come up with similar ideas and similar positions, kind of what I'm doing. So it'd be interesting to see what the story there was. Anyway, so here's Halberstadt, a bit of his life story. Born in Odessa, then went to France via Berlin, and obviously that's where he ended up doing the work with Duchamp. Obviously, unfortunately, as a Jew, some of his family members died during World War II, and then he was actually quite a prominent composer in the after the end of World War II. And then if we continue down the page, we can see all these compositions. He's got lots of, not corresponding squares ones, but then that could be corresponding squares. And that's the one we're doing. And there are many others. In fact, you see some snippets and blogs on the internet where a lot of Halberstadt examples showing up in the Averback book on pawn endgames and so on, right? So I couldn't find the one I'm doing, couldn't find the layout of the corresponding squares in any of those blogs or endgame books, which I have. So basically sort of did through first principles. So it'd be good to go through that as an example. And here is the information about Halberstadt on Wikipedia, games, and his publications. This one with Duchamp is the most famous one. Okay, so that's a bit of the background. And then we'll do it sort of the other way around today. I came up with this idea of, I'm trying to sort of locate the players, how they're related in space and time. And I've now slightly changed this one to come out with a chart. Okay, it looks like it's mostly fitting of where the people came from. I'm missing the year here. I've got to work out some way of implementing that sort of stuff. And you can see, okay, there's a few people, Grigoriev, Halberstadt, and Karas, sort of from the, I guess, the Soviet Union, for lack of a better word. Most of these composers were basically in sort of the Germanic, Austrian, Hungary, Poland sort of area. You can see where they've all come from there. And then a few representatives from Italy and France, obviously, and the UK. So that sort of gives you a sense of sort of, Central and Western Europe was sort of the hub of a lot of the work on corresponding squares. Okay, so next thing I'm going to look at very quickly while I've got this around is the simulator, which just to give a sort of, I use a simulator to get a sense of what the position should look like. So we'll bring it up. It's fixing nice, and we'll go result a draw. Decide to move black. And you get a sense of, if white is there, black has to be on those squares. When you look at the red squares, because one thing which is not so clean about this is that in a lot of cases, black can respond by counterattacking. So you can notice those red squares on the king side. And a lot of squares, in particular, maybe the squares one in front of them, would allow black to make a runner for the f pawn and counteract what white is doing on the queen side. can see that as we sort of move across, same problem happens here, right? That actually, if we're here, you can see black, this whole thing, if you actually move the board, black's position, king position is quite constrained. But if you're there, black has to be ready. It's his side to move. He has to be ready to hop on to effectively the f5 or g5 square to block the white king as you come back. As I said here, it's very funny. There's sort of, even from h8 with black to move, he can counterattack from this position. Now, if we change it to white to move, this is where it gets more interesting. White to move, okay. White to move, black's got to be on those two squares. That's what I mean in terms of restricting the squares you can be on. So move across. And so black can either counterattack or be ready to cover, right? If we go to c3, black should be blocking on b5, okay? And you can see the problem here is that if we move to this square that we're starting off with white to move, black is lost. So what I've noticed is, it makes it really difficult, is that a lot of these corresponding square positions are composed so one of the kings is in a terribly unfavorable position, right? Because if the black king wasn't there, he would be able to defend, as I sort of described. Yeah. So that what happens is you go to b1. Okay, apologies, that's the winning move if you've seen it already. Then black cannot get to the square he needs to be, which is b7, right? So if he had been able to get to b7, like if it was an a6, you just pop back to b7 now and everything would be fine, because if the white king starts advancing to c2, then we go to a6, and if we try and get to c3 and then the key square b4, then black is there to stop. So I just do that to give myself a bit of a perspective before I then go across to my chess capture screen and actually come up with the solution. Okay, so I think we're done with that. Just close that and minimize that, and here we have the board, and we're going to go through that systematic process. What are the key squares? The shortest route often restricts things, and then from that shortest route, work out what's going on. The main thing is, particularly in this corner, we're going to have the longest route, and this corner is where black gets tripped up because of the existing king position. Okay, so this is where the juicy bits are. I've done this already, but we'll just do it. I'll do it again just to sort of demonstrate. We need to find the key squares first, and then I think we can comfortably say the key square on b4, because just grab the a pawn and win, and the other key square is over here on a g4. We'll grab probably both those f pawns and then win from there. So now we need to see if there's an equal length shortest route between both, which will restrict where the king can be, right? So we're on c3. Black basically has to be on b5, and then as we run across, d2 matches, can't be there, b6, e1 matches c2, f1 matches d7, and we've got to go kind of a slightly long way around here, g1 matches e7, we hop up here, h2 matches f6, and then we'll finally get to the h3 square, and black can match that. So that's the shortest route. So black and white can go backwards and forwards when white moves on to square mark 1. Black has to move to square mark 1. So we've done it before. That's good. I quite like that now. And now we fill in these little corner squares which exist, right? So there's one here. So white could always take a detour that way, but luckily that's between the 5 and the 6 squares. Luckily, that's the right word. Black has a matching square on f7. And then the other sort of corner we have here is between the 2 and the 3. Let's call that square 9, and 2 and a 3. Black also has one of those. Excellent. So that's basically mapped it out. So in terms of the route going backwards and forwards between the two key squares, black can handle himself. Okay, so now let's move on to the next layer. Just going to switch over because I've run out of numbers. Actually, this square first, sorry. This square needs a 1, a 2, and a 9. That's a fairly good restricting square. 1, 2, and 9. There's only one square which is for black. That's his a6 square. And then now you got an a 2, and a 9. And a 2, and a 9. That's the only square there. In fact, we've got two squares here, which are a and b. But also this one here is also the 1. So let's put that in. We'll call it D on the other one. An a and a b and a 1 has to be also on that square. So let's say some squares can match two things. Now I've got a D and A and a B, which I call C. D, A, B. Well, there's only the C, the B7 square, which matches that. So now we've mapped it all out. I think that's enough mapping out. And you can see now it's white to move. What will white do? Just think about it for a second. So we've basically got two relevant moves here. We can move to a D or a C. If we move to a D, then black can move to a D, and then it's all dandy, right? Because then from the D, white could go to a 1, A, B, or C, and black has exactly the same choices. So the corresponding squares work out. But you can see what happens there. If we go to the C, black cannot teleport to the C square. So as I said, the real reason for this position being so bad is that the black king's the wrong spot. For instance, if we played king to A1, well then black can just retreat to A6, and then he would have access to, just show you on the board, right? So you can look, we went here, threatening to go to a D or a C. Well, then we can go to there. We can cover the D and the C. Just let's take them off for a second. And if we went to the D, ready to go to the 1 or the A or the B or the C, then of course we go to the D, threatening to go to the C, the B, and the A, and the 1. So that all looks nice. But if we go to the C, we're threatening to go to the D and the A and the B, and it can't be covered, right? So we can sort of go through a winning line here, for instance. So let's say we go to B1, as discussed, and then now doesn't really matter where we go. That might be the longest defense move. So now he's on, black's on the D. We go to our D square, B6. So now we're on the Ds, and then what can black do? King A5 doesn't make much sense. Let's go to A6, just keep a bit of flexibility here. Then obviously we pop on to C2, the only winning move. I mean, obviously it's only winning moves. And if white didn't take the opportunity at the start of the game, then he wouldn't be winning. Computer keeps on saying this is actually the best move. So now you look at it, he covered the 1 and the 2. So now we've got a couple of choices, but 9 seems to be the best way. King B6. I'm just following a computer line here. Now we go to the 3, doesn't work because black will be able to match that. We've got to hop onto the 2. So it's just like zigzag. We've seen this before with corresponding squares. Just embarrass. And you see what's changed now? Well, we've moved a little bit further across. So let's try maybe, keeps on saying A6 is a possibility. Now we just make a run. So let's see how this line goes. King to B5 maybe. So maybe we're going to see how this works. Other moves win, but now King F1, B6, and basically we're going to get across here before black can defend. So that's the key to that. If we go back to this opening, back to the opening position, say only winning move is King B1. Black cannot get to his marked C marked square. Okay, so that's just the first example of Halberstadt. As I say, there's seems to be quite a lot of them covered by Averbach. These ones I always find examples like this very, very interesting, very, very, very particular the way you have to solve them, and it's pretty interesting. Okay, so that's that. Hope you found the solution. Hope you enjoyed that, and thank you very much for watching.